Good evening, and good evening to you. WeatherBrains episode number 798, The Road to 800. We're almost there. Welcome to the show for May 3rd, 2021. This is the pre-show, this amazing part of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say very outrageous things. Okay, May 3rd. What does that mean? Another tornado anniversary. Goodness gracious, we have had so many, but it's that time of the year. And I do believe we'll be going back to the May 3rd, 1999 more tornado tonight. So another very interesting show. Hope you had a good week. Weather is really active across the country. I'm sitting here babysitting some thunderstorms. Just south of me, we've got severe weather in parts of Texas and Oklahoma and Illinois, and it must be early May. This is when this kind of stuff happens here. So let's see if we can get all these dweebs on the show here. Bring them on. And if you're new to this, if you want to watch the actual program, move the slider about 6 or 7 minutes in. But we always have a little pre-show here where you can see how the sausage is made. And I think everybody's going to be online with us tonight. We'll see. Really enjoyed the show last week. I thought that was very therapeutic, I think, for all of us. Talking about April 27th, 2011. And again, it was the kind of show where, for me, it's easier to go back and listen in the car, because I'm the button puncher guy and I am at work. For those that don't know, I'm actually doing real responsibilities during the show here. And sometimes I get distracted and can't hear everything that happens. So I always like to go back and listen to our shows, the audio version, in the car when I'm driving. And just a really good show. I think for all of us, it was very healthy to be on together. And most of us have known each other for years. And we all had that common experience 10 years ago. And when you work something like that, you're just kind of bonded for a long time. But I did enjoy that. That was a great show. And thanks to all of you for letting us do that. And again, tonight, we're going to go back to 1999. We're going to party like it's 1999 and talk a little Oklahoma weather. Hopefully Kim can join us. Again, looking at the action there in Oklahoma, it looks like it's well to the south and east of Norman, out toward McAllister. It looks like they got a couple of tornado warnings in effect there. I'm seeing a tornado warning north of Dallas and northern Collin County. I used to live in Collin County, Texas, a long time ago. This tornado warning's for the northern end of Collin County above McKinney. And I got another one. Looks like that's in Johnson County, south of Fort Worth. Look down Troy's Way in Austin. Looks like he's okay. He's got some storms south and west of here. So let's start to bring in our guests. Here they come. They're rolling in. I thought for a minute they just ignored my invitation, which would be horribly hurtful if people ignored my invitation. Jenna just went out there and fed the cat. And,
good.
That cat wasn't even hungry. It took 2 licks of that canned stinky stuff, and then it followed me back and jumped into the back of my truck, which it does every night.
Oh.
Just an old black cat.
No.
We've had that thing for 12 years.
Oh my goodness.
Jinx, Jim.
We used to have 2, and then a lady took one home. We've actually got 3 more out here now. It's like we always have a family of cats. Yes, sir, Mr. Murray. You okay? Are we well?
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in a Roach Motel this evening. You're home.
Yeah. It's kind of nice to be home.
Yeah. You seem a little low, maybe.
Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah.
I think Bill's speaking softly.
Yes,
He's carrying a big stick and speaking softly. I have a big stick. It's that NPR delivery, National Public Radio.
That's
Good
right.
evening. You can't speak loudly.
Yeah, I'm back on my big mic tonight, so we'll see if I'm trying to not having it poke out of my head like I did.
Yeah.
the other show, like Mr. T, I hear.
Uh,
All right. I don't
So,
think I've invited our guests yet. Here we go. Let's get that out the door here. They're probably
your audio is a
gonna panic.
smidgen low, Bill. I don't know if you can turn the wick up any there or not.
Let's see. We'll try. We'll try.
So my cat has decided that she likes to play with Post-it notes. She's running
What?
around today with a packet of Post-it notes in her mouth, running around the house crying over them. I'm not sure why. I don't know who she's trying to get the Post-it notes to. I don't know who she's trying to take notes for, but it's really cute.
That makes no sense.
I know, but it's super cute. It's very entertaining.
Sometimes cats just don't make any sense.
No.
All right. How's it now, James? Is that a little
Um,
better?
Talk to us in a normal voice, like you're on the air, Bill. Speak with us in that big booming on the air voice.
I don't have such a thing, so I wouldn't know how to do that. So testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Not good.
That'll work.
You want me to
Yeah,
switch
no.
to the
It's-
condenser? How
No,
about
you're
now?
good.
Yeah, that sounds better.
All right. Thank y'all for telling me that. The gang's all
You
here.
are
That's
good.
amazing.
Right. Wow. Yay.
They arrived very
Here's my
quickly.
cat. Here's the cat, Jen.
Oh, sweet baby. He wants
course,
the whole
the
box.
back of my
That's the
truck-
problem.
Yeah. Yeah. The cat knows where the food comes from.
That's exactly. Oh,
But the cat is shedding because it's getting warm and the winter fur. But it thinks the back of my truck smells bad, which it really does. I mean, it's nasty back there. It looks like a landfill. That's our nightly routine. You hop back of the truck,
no.
and that cat is operating a scam operation. It's like there's got to be 12 people in this building that feed that cat every day. It comes up and acts like it's starving to everybody. All right, so we are at the top of the hour. Here comes Nate. Is Troy going to join us tonight? Or is he busy we got so many storms going on here. It looks like San Antonio's got issues, but I think he's okay.
I haven't heard anything to the contrary.
And Kim has, I think her storms are pretty far east of Norman now, down toward McAllister. So, Aubrey, you okay?
Yes, I'm good. How are you guys?
Hey, y'all.
Good.
Doing good.
We need to do email tonight. We've not done email in like 3 months. So I like the email I saw today, the road to 800, because we're at 798. All right, well, let's start this thing. Everybody good here? Bill, we
Yep,
give us a green light.
All accounted for. Green light.
Everybody's here. All right. Well, all right. Let's get this thing rolling here. Here we go. Recorder 1, recorder 2, and here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service, and the AMS Weather Band.
Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band. The AMS Weather Band is a global community of weather enthusiasts dedicated to learning and sharing their love of science. Visit amsweatherband.org to learn more and join the band today.
WeatherBrains episode number 798. Weekly gathering of weather geeks, nerds, dorks, dweebs, and weenies. We've been doing this for a long time. We first went on the air in 2006, and we're still here, approaching show number 800. But thank you for joining us tonight. Aubrey Urbanowitz, thank you for being our shining light of common sense.
Oh, you
On this
guys are too
program.
kind.
No, you bring common sense and the proper ambiance to this show, professionalism. So thank you.
It's only for an hour and a half.
So, how are you, ma'am? What's happening in your world?
Fantastic. I was hoping we might get our first, real thunderstorm of the season so far tonight, but they tried. They did not make it. But we got some good rain out of our wannabe thunderstorm. So temperatures are nice. It actually feels muggy here. My dew point is 63, and it's been a muggy day in the Shenandoah Valley. We'll cool down by the end of the week, but otherwise things are rocking and rolling. Still have not heard thunder yet this year, though.
Okay, our dew point hit 72 here today, so it's starting to feel like summertime.
Last week it was 57, and I was like, "Ooh, it's humid today."
We'll send some of the 75-degree dew points up there later in the month here. Jen, what's your dew point in Ohio up there? What you got?
It is 60, actually. So it's a little muggy here today, and it had a little rain, and then it cleared out nicely. And it's going to be kind of active the next couple of days, and then we get cold again. Highs Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, only in the 50s here. So we're going the wrong direction again. But it's been a nice couple of days. At least it got a little bit warmer, and I got out this afternoon, did a little walkabout through the neighborhood, and got some exercise, got some fresh air. So it was good. But yeah, it's been good and busy. Tornado Talk is still busy. We made it through the anniversary, and now we continue to move toward the last part of our writing. And Aubrey helped us out this week. She got us some video for one of the tornadoes in Virginia. It's a really great story for the Folks Run area. So we're excited about that. So we've got still some stuff to come on that. And wow, a lot of great feedback, guys, from last week's show. It's been overwhelming. So I think it had a big impact. Yeah.
Last week's show was good. I think it was therapeutic for a lot of us, and this show tonight could be that way. So Nate, let's check your dew point in Raleigh. What you got? Oh, Nate.
Uh-oh.
Did he
there? Let's try that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Bingo.
There, buddy.
There we go.
We have a winner.
All right. Oh, let's see what the old dew point is at the old Raleigh-Durham International Air. 69. Our dew point right now.
That's a little muggy.
Got us beat right now. We're only 67, Nate.
Multiple rounds of rain today, so we had the atmosphere goosing the old dew point a little bit. But yeah, you're sitting here keeping an eye on tornado warning coverage out of Dallas and out of Washington, D.C. I had two markets at one point covering up the voice. I'm sure we'll hear about that. But when you got tornado warnings, you get on TV and you tell people about it, because that's what we do.
You got to do what you got to do. Now, I think most people in the weather enterprise, at least in my case, I have an internal 65-degree dew point sensor. When the dew point hits 65, I know it. I mean, it's a very odd.
Mine is 60. Anything more than 60, and I don't like it. But 59 and below, I'm good to go.
65, all 8 hairs will just kind of sprout out like Bozo or Larry of the Three Stooges or something. But Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest. Go ahead, Nate. What you going to say?
I was just going to say, I knew that I grew up in the Southeast, and high dew points were always a thing, and I knew that it was really the humidity and not the heat. When I moved to Texas, and the first weekend I was there was Memorial Day, and I remember sitting out at a pool party Memorial Day afternoon. It was 95 degrees, a dew point in the 50s. We're sitting in the shade, and it felt fine. It was delightful.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of a breeze is all you needed. Yep,
dry heat. All right, Bill, let's bring in our guest. Let's get this party started.
Yeah, James, let me tell you, First Class says checked in full tonight. In the weather enterprise, fatalities are down. Warnings are better than they've ever been, but we really can't seem to stem the tide of billion-dollar weather disasters. It seems like everybody's talking about it. No one's really doing anything about it, but you can't say that about tonight's WeatherBrains. When we, as meteorologists, look at weather disasters, we look at getting the warning out. Emergency managers look at preparedness and response. The social scientists like Kim look at how people behave. But we've talked on this show before about how to build better, how to, look at how people can respond better to our warnings, but how do we promote resiliency at the policy level? Tonight's first guest WeatherBrain led a panel discussion at the 101st annual meeting of the AMS this January about a multidisciplinary approach to do just that. He's a team lead instructor at the Warning Decision Training Branch in Norman. Jim Ledoux, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back.
And correct anything there that I may have gotten wrong about titles or jobs or any of that. But Jim, what led you to tackle this subject?
Oh boy, well, I think a while ago, I might have been talking about, boy, we need to change the EF scale or at least improve it. And we're well along that path. And the interesting thing is many of the participants in that process, we got a standards committee with the American Society for Civil Engineers. We've been working on this for some years. And over that time, I think it's rubbed off the engineers' passion for improving building standards, and many of them that are working on this standards committee, trying to figure out wind speeds, are also coming up with ways to build better to come up with less damage given a certain wind speed. And so I think some of that passion is rubbed off, but as always, there's an awful lot of programs out there and a lot of activities that are going to help try to promote better building standards, and yet the needle just doesn't seem to move that much. I mean, it has in some areas, and we have a shining example of that here. But I guess there's a little bit of frustration, and so there's just recently it was the meteorologist in charge of Glasgow, Tanya Francine, which I think you might have heard of her and talked with her.
She's a friend of the podcast, like you, Jim.
Yeah. And she came to me and said, is there something we can do? It's like, why don't we go ahead and start up an ad hoc committee in the American Meteorological Society about community resiliency and engineering better resiliency. And so I thought, well, I think it can pull together a few people and really cover this. And one of our first activities was to actually do this discussion at the AMS in the annual meeting back in January. And so we worked on that for some time and invited several people that you see here to that. And hopefully it doesn't stop there. I think there's a real need for engaging in the meteorological community to help kind of spread the word. I think, and David Pravat, who's here, kind of said it best, is the engineering community thinks we have a megaphone that, some way that we can help move this needle forward. But a lot of people are there and they've been working on this a lot. And that's certainly one of our guests here, Tanya Brown Giamanco from the insurance business suit and don't get me, I hope I don't get this wrong. It's IBHS, which is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. And so they have a program there, and there's actually a couple success stories in that program after last year's hurricane season. And the same thing with bringing in somebody who's actually been there, boots on the ground in Moore, Oklahoma. That's Deidre Edbury, who's been involved in this process, along with others, including Elizabeth Waitman and the building community here. The first town, the first city in the interior U.S., not the hurricane zone, but the interior U.S., where they've actually instituted a better building code. And so I think that really helps a lot. And Kevin Simmons has researched the impacts of that code on the real estate market and whether there were any negative impacts and so forth. So I think there are a lot of stories here that can put together some kind of narrative to say, hey, we can do something about it. It just needs to become infectious, that we can push that and push the building standards to a point where we can save a lot of grief. And, it's not just lives and property, but it's also just recovering from something, a major disaster. In some cases takes more than a year. And we had somebody here in our weather community that was hit in the Moore 2013 tornado, and it took her literally 2 years dealing with insurance, just to replace the things that she could. And of course, there are so many things that she couldn't replace. They're just strewn all over the place. There was no price value to that. So what can we save? What can we do? And so I think that's where we're moving on this. And I think after having seen and witnessed so much damage throughout the time that I've done my surveying, that it seems really natural to try to do something about it on this end. We've got the better warnings, we've got everything else, but what about this?
So, and Jim, you've done such a great job introducing most of the guest WeatherBrains tonight. I think no, that's wonderful. Do you want to introduce Kevin real quick, and then I'll start asking some questions.
Oh, sure. So Kevin Simmons has written several books on the economics of tornadoes and in many aspects in a similar way, even researching the economic impact of the WSR-88D, the radar, the Doppler radar network. And so, I thought it was just a natural. Kevin actually came up to Moore, has collaborated with researchers up here, looking at the impacts of the Moore building code. There have been storms since it's been implemented. And I think he's found some really interesting findings that, I don't want to steal his thunder. I thought it would be best if Kevin talks to that. But the research is really salient, and I would say it's not just in Moore, but can be certainly applicable anywhere else.
And with impeccable timing, Dr. Kim Clocko-McLean joins us. Kim, we're so glad you're here with us tonight. And how are things where you are?
They're, I think I'm the third weather brain who's had significant house damage in this last 2 months. So the hail that hit Norman, I think Jim, you were spared some of the worst of it, if I followed that right. But I
missed it.
You missed it. Yep, the correct side of town, I guess.
Well, I think you'll probably hear tonight what type of shingles to put back, Kim, and some other fun things. So
yeah, it's going to be a good discussion for that. We were talking about how in our neighborhood, you walk through the neighborhood and it's like compounding, disaster effects. We had there was a 90-mile-an-hour wind event that had taken down some trees in our neighborhood at the end of last summer, in I think August. And then we had the October ice storm that took down more trees. And then we had the cold snap that killed off more of the vegetation. So with all the stuff that was killed, when the hail came, there were a lot of trees and shrubs missing. So there are now a lot of windows missing that maybe wouldn't have been missing if the trees hadn't been killed. And you'd go through the neighborhood and it's just like, what has happened here? Everything just looks tattered and destroyed. So but we're going to have a new roof. We just got nailed by 3-inch hail with 1-inch protrusions, and when you have hail like that, even a class 4 shingle isn't going to save you. At least we don't have to replace immediately. But yeah, James, we're in the need major house repairs league together.
It's the WeatherBrains curse. The WeatherBrains curse.
I'm afraid you're right, James.
I would feel a little anxious, right?
Don't say it. I don't want to hear it.
Who's next?
Not
Who's
with
next?
An enhanced risk here tomorrow. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, other than that, doing great. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I had mine last year because we had, tremendous flooding. We had 2 events where we got in excess of 4.5 inches of rain in less than an hour within about 5 months of each other. And I was ready to call in the Corps of Engineers to prevent it from happening again. Of course, now, we barely get 700ths this morning when we were supposed to get a good amount of rain. I'll probably never get another heavy rain event as long as I live, because now we have these, these buttresses, diverting water around the ranch here. So, you never know what's going to happen. But it's good to have you here tonight, Kim. Jim, thanks for putting this excellent panel together tonight. We're really excited. Of course, today is the anniversary of that terrible May 3rd, 1999 tornado that struck Moore, one of the most expensive in history. And Deidre, what was the death toll on that tornado in Moore that day?
So for the city limits of Moore, there were 6 that perished in our city limits. But of course, it started, much further south, and then carried on into Midwest City, Del City area. I think the total was in the 30s for the whole state, which was primarily in the South Metro area. But for Moore, it was 6.
That tornado had such an impact on me that I used to be, you had the Weather Channel and you had other things, but if you really wanted to document a tornado, you needed the newspapers because the internet really was still kind of coming of age at that point. And I actually called and subscribed to the Oklahoma City newspaper the next morning and have a box back here of all the newspapers for the next month because the stories are just always amazing.
Well, and preparing, of course, I looked through all those photos and stories as well. I'm in charge of social media, and of course want to make sure and put a post up. But then of course last night I'm thinking of Tupelo and hoping and praying that nothing was happening. And so I wake up this morning to make certain that who I needed to respond to and how I needed to couch that post, because I didn't want to put anything up that would distract from anything that was happening elsewhere. But I did post a picture that is taken from the Daily Oklahoman, and it happens to be my family's neighborhood. And so when I post things like that, and it gets a ton of reach and a lot of stories that are added to it, it's so heartening and wonderful to think that maybe I selected the right photo that wasn't as traumatic as it might have could been, and I'm glad about that. But it also tells the story as well as it can.
For sure. Take us back to that awful day, Deidre, for you personally, and talk about your recollections of it.
Well, I wish that I could say I was very young, but I was not. I was an adult. But yeah, I mean, again, just the atmosphere is always, I wouldn't say that day there was especially warnings that were prolific throughout the day, kind of like there have been most recently. But we knew that obviously anytime in May that there were a chance of those things. And of course, with school being in session and towards the end, there were lots of activities that were happening outside of the school day. So in the evening time, there are awards assemblies, and specifically one of our largest high schools had an awards assembly that night. So a lot of people out and about. And I do remember, and I work, I've never left Cleveland County in my life. I've lived here my whole entire life. So worked very close by. And towards the end of the work day, meteorologists were telling people definitely to be on guard, and then also to be underground if at all possible, and really not giving anybody really a choice. Just calling it in very clear terms what to do for life-saving measures. And those were words that were very different than what we typically would hear. It started out with kind of the typical warning, and then it became very evident that you needed to do something extraordinary, maybe that you've never done before, having lived here your whole life. And so I chose to stay away from where the storm path was going and stay in the Norman area, but knowing that my family and my parents were in the Moore area. And so the picture that I posted was right by a First Baptist church, which is on the northern end of the city limits of Moore. And our entire neighborhood was decimated. My parents were actually out of town, but coming back in from a camping trip. And it was on a Monday, also Monday, May 3rd. City council was in session. And so again, everybody just did what they needed to do to take life-saving measures. And then we could not believe the damage that it inflicted.
Well, and then I was in Ardmore 4 years later when another one came and passed through generally the same area. It seems like I recollect a bus on its side, or
or it could have been my dad's RV. My dad's RV on May 8th was toppled over in the same exact neighborhood, and one of our firefighters pushed it right side up because it was leaking gas. And I think he texted me later and said, "I got your dad's RV turned over." And I thought, that's fantastic. I have no idea what he's talking about. And so later it became obvious that my dad's RV had flipped over. But yeah, almost the identical path. And my parents' house was hit in the May 8th storm. No lives lost on that occasion. But that was on a Thursday evening.
Yeah, and then again in 2010, 2013, and how many times since the late 1800s has Moore been hit, Deidre?
Well, I don't know. And if I were to look back, although I should know because that's what everyone, that's all the data that people brought us, especially after 2013. And I just remember thinking, now's not the time really to right after, 2 and 3 days later, people were just talking about how incredible it was that this particular area would have been hit this many times, and they went as far back in history as it was recorded. And I could just tell you there were a lot of tracks on the map. And so I have no idea, quite frankly. And I'm glad to say that you might be one of the first or fewer than a handful of people that have ever asked that question. And I'm just.
Well, that's good because you're in charge of economic development and you 100%. Don't really want to be talking about that when you're pitching your town.
That's my point. And I can't really hide from this. I figure it's out in the world now and people know about it. So I always wait for somebody to bring it up. But I will tell you that honestly, after the May 20th, 2013 storm was the very first time that I felt that my job had come to an end, that we could not come back yet again and have a developable community that people wanted to be a part of. And I'm ashamed to say that because it's my hometown and I love it greatly and dearly. But I will be very honest to tell you that I felt that very thing for the first 2 through 5 to 6 days. But I was very wrong. And I'm so grateful that I was wrong. And again, yes, in charge of economic development. And I still don't get asked nearly as often as I think I would or should about the propensity of us being hit by a storm like that.
Well, good. I can remember a time when chambers of commerce in Kansas didn't even want to admit that there were tornadoes.
They wanted to hide the Wizard of Oz movie maybe and not let anybody pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah, so that's a pretty amazing story for sure. Dr. David Pravat, you're with us tonight. I guess you're in your office at the University of Florida. Are you at home? I'm not sure where you are. We're comparing backgrounds now in all this Zoom world that we live in today.
Oh, this is my never land. It reminds me of what my office is, so that I feel somewhat accustomed. But it is my gym, my living room, my.
Do you know that your toughest cleaning problems can be caused by hard water metals?
I have to change my camera position because James makes fun of my Peloton. So I have to move my camera before I start the show because I get abused for this being sort of a multi-purpose space too. But David, talk for a minute about your research. You were on the show in 2014 and you've probably had more picks of the week from your engineering reports following major disasters on WeatherBrains, but sort of remind us what your focus is.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. I was recalling as Deidre was talking about more, I literally at that Monday was given testimony before U.S. Congress about the wind hazard bill and things that we had. And I was planning with my students back in Florida to prepare another report on the Moore tornado. So that I was sort of halfway in DC and trying to get myself over there. But I originally, as we talked about in 2014, I'm a structural engineer from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean and a wind engineer. And so what brought me to Florida was what everybody runs away from in Florida, the hurricanes. And, so we were here, I landed here with the Hurricane Charlie in 2004, essentially, which was a big one. And then, it just never seemed to end after that. We did the Francis, we did Hurricane Ivan, we did Jean that year. And then the next 2 years, we had this very large crop of hurricanes. And then it was quiet. Hurricanes were quiet for a while. And I recall speaking to my colleague in 2011, which was a Tuscaloosa, April 27th one. And it was a question of, should I go or should I not go? I don't know anything about tornadoes at this time. They're like Deidre said, it's the Wizard of Oz. That was it. And then when I went there, the experience was immediately from afar, we felt, a bomb went off, that everything is destroyed and so on and so forth. But then after us engineers started to do case study after case study. We started to identify the differences between the houses that we saw in Alabama, and then a month later it was Joplin, and what we do in Florida. And there was, very little anchorage and load paths and so on and so forth. And so it started to make sense, not in a nice way, in a way that's like, why would anyone do this, right? What is the purpose? How could this, as far as we were concerned, is the engineer, we couldn't engineer what I was seeing. So we started a lot of digging there. And then I sort of made the full circle back with my research group, and we came upon Texas Tech University's work. It all started in Lubbock, Texas. It all started in 1970, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was Kishore Mehta, McDonald, and everyone there studied that tornado. They did the engineering work. They put it on paper, and they said what to do and what would happen if you don't. And we chose not to do anything, which was sad. Okay, it has taken us as a country 50 years since 1970 for us to get a tornado design code on the books, which will be coming out in ASCE 722 in next year, right? So the effort that we need to make is not simply on an engineering one, but it really is to advocate for and to collaborate with anyone who can give us that megaphone to help communities understand, divided you will fall. You have to come together. It has to be all or nothing. We can't just reinforce one house out of a neighborhood. It must be, the baseline that we establish for everyone.
I love a show on PBS, that little mini series that ran back in this maybe the late winter, called "Hacking Your Mind," and that series was outstanding. And with the political polarization we face today, they were looking at how that had evolved and unraveled, and some ways that we might get back, to some sort of unity. But I thought the interesting story was that applies to tonight, when, trying to get communities to become more energy efficient. You'd think, well, you could incentivize them with financial rewards. That's what Dr. Simmons is here to talk about tonight. This mitigation and disaster planning and better, building codes, has a financial return. You could shame them, by, saying, here's all the ones who didn't perform well. But the best way of all to get a community to work together, was to show them that their neighbors were doing it and compare them to their neighbors. And you've got an example of that, I guess, maybe indirectly, Tanya, because you're with us tonight from the Insurance Institute for, Business and Home Safety. Hurricane Sally taught us some lessons in coastal Alabama this year, didn't it?
It did. That area is prime spot for what we call our fortified home programs. That's a Code Plus construction program that was developed by IBHS almost 20 years ago. But it's basically a voluntary program that gives people the tools or the guidance that they need to go above and beyond code, to take extra steps to build their homes and businesses stronger. And Alabama is actually our shining star. The overwhelming majority of our fortified homes are in Alabama. We're in the 20,000 range, which is about 2/3 of our total across the nation. But there's actually legislation that requires the use of that code or requires discounts for the use of that standard in coastal Alabama. And Hurricane Sally really was the first big test Our fortified program started almost 20 years ago, but we really didn't get to big quantities until most recently. So at the time that Sally made landfall, there's about 17,000 fortified homes in coastal Alabama at that time. We walked away with hardly a scratch from Sally, versus side by side next door neighbors that didn't have fortified construction. In many ways, they had a lot of the losses and frustrations. Not that Sally was, a super heavy duty puncher like some of the other hurricanes from last year. But in terms of looking at how kind of the community responded, there was a marked difference between fortified homes and those that were, just built conventionally. So kudos to the state of Alabama for saying, we got to do better. And really the builders there responding and the community responding and saying, yeah, we can do better. And more, they've put it into governance. This is a little bit different model and it's working. All those things that David described that, we learned how to do in the 1970s, that's what we're doing. It's not complicated. We know exactly what to do. We've shown that it works. It's now just getting more and more people to know about it and to make those decisions. It was really remarkable. We hardly had any issues in Hurricane Sally with fortified properties in Alabama.
Yeah, and we were lucky to have your husband and Julie Shayu Woodard on the show talking about the program several months ago. And so if you want to go back and search for that show, it is worth listening to because it really gives you a lot of good advice. So it's nice to have you with us tonight, Tanya, and looking forward to the conversation. So Dr. Simmons, take us, for a minute through the exercise of understanding, how, this sort of activity can actually bring a financial return.
Well, I was first introduced to this idea, and I bring this up because David mentioned Texas Tech. I got my doctorate at Texas Tech, and even though I am an economist—
Me too.
Yes, Tanya's another Red Raider. Go Raiders.
You'll have to battle Nate and the NC State crowd here tonight.
Okay.
Last week they had the run of the show, so it's all Red Raiders tonight.
All right. But David mentioned Kishore Mehta, and Kishore was a great mentor of mine and brought me into this research agenda and got me started on looking at how an economist can contribute to what the engineers have been doing. And basically, our job is to show that if you do the right thing, there is a positive payback for that. And we have been able to conduct some benefit cost analysis of various policies. We started off with looking at the statewide building code in Florida, and we had the results from that showed that if for every dollar that you invest in mitigation, you get a return of about $6 in reduced loss across the life of the home. And then you look at a more localized example of that in Moore, where Deidre's from, and we can see that the same kind of return is there. Now, it wasn't quite as high in Oklahoma. It was about it was about $4 of reduced damage from a $1 investment in mitigation. So we were able to start looking at some of those things, and we even expanded that analysis out and kind of did a what if analysis of if other states that might be in that benefit zone. And we found that in addition to Florida, in addition to Oklahoma, that Alabama and Mississippi would easily be able to pass a benefit cost test. And then there's one other thing that I wanted to mention about the code policies, and then I'd like to touch on just a little bit what Tanya had to say about the voluntary. But the pushback you get from cities when you ask them, why don't you take on something like this? David and I have been talking about this for years, and I have complete sympathy with David's point of view. But the pushback you get from a city is, look, if we undertake a building code that's going to increase the price of a home in our town, and our next door neighbor doesn't do that, then we're at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to development. And so we're very concerned about doing this because we don't want to price ourselves out of the market. So what we did in Moore, going back to Moore, we said, okay, well, let's test that hypothesis. So we were able to get multiple listing service data from two cities that are right next to each other, Moore and Norman. Moore has the enhanced code, Norman does not. And what we found was that there was absolutely no difference in the real estate market in the years after the enactment of the code. We looked at price per square foot. We looked at the number of building permits that were pulled. We looked at sales. We looked at weekly sales. And what we found was that there was no statistical difference between Moore and Norman. So in other words, Moore was not paying a price in terms of development. In fact, I would make the argument, Deidre said she was worried about losing economic development. I think the smartest thing Moore did was impose this code, because that said to the world that this is a problem, we're going to confront it up front, and we're going to do something about it. And I think that gives people who are looking for a place to live in central Oklahoma some reassurance that we've got policymakers that are not afraid of the policy. So these are some of the things that we've done around building codes. And then I want to just very briefly talk about the voluntary aspects of it, because Tanya's right. The success of the fortified home in Alabama is just amazing. And there is a number of studies. I've done some, and some of my friends at other universities have done some as well, that have said, okay, let's look at mitigation the same way you would look at an upgrade on a kitchen. What does it do to the resale value of the home? And what we found in the case of Alabama, there are some wonderful economists at University of Alabama and Auburn that have done a study on the fortified program itself. And it found that in Southern Alabama, you get a 7% premium if the home is fortified versus one that is not. I did a study, in fact, this was my study with Texas Tech when I was getting my dissertation. We did the same thing in Galveston, but we were looking at a very specific hurricane mitigation, and that was storm shutters. And what we found was that you got a 4% increase in the value of the home if the home in Galveston had storm shutters versus those that didn't. And that result was strong enough. Storm shutters is a fairly easy mitigation to do on existing properties. That was enough of a result that you could justify buying a home without them, put them on with the assurance that you were going to get your return back when you sell the house. And then finally, we've looked at the return on safe rooms, which after the May 3rd tornado, there was a big push both nationally and within the state of Oklahoma to get people to put in safe rooms. So a colleague of mine, Dan Sutter, who is now at an Alabama university, Troy, we did a study to look at the same kind of idea. Is there an increase in the sales price of the home if you have a safe room versus not? And we found that there was about a 3.2% increase. Again, enough that you could justify investing in a safe room and expect to be able to get your money back when you sell. So I think from the economic point of view, we've got some very good news, both in terms of the public policy aspects of mandatory building codes, but also in terms of the value of voluntary mitigation. So I think that what the contribution of the economist is just said, look, what the engineers are doing, it's not only the right thing to do, but it's justified from an economic point of view. And so the argument then becomes weaker when you try to push back on that and say, no, we can't do this because we're going to mess up the affordability. We're not going to be, competitive. We have some research that we can offer that says, that's not really true. So that's what I'm bringing to the table is an economic argument that the kinds of things that Tanya and David are doing are, again, not only the right thing to do, but they're the smart thing to do.
It's a wonderful point that you make. And I think it's important for people here in central Oklahoma to understand the value of what you're saying. There's sort of this psychology around the Moore Norman difference. And from a tornado's perspective, there's no reason to believe that Moore is actually any more risk prone than Norman is. If you look at the map Deidre was talking about earlier, you see all of the tornadoes, sort of crossing in different places. And while there's been sort of one particular intersection in Moore that's been a little bit unlucky recently, there are other unlucky spots in Norman as well. And I think I've mentioned this on the show before. When I was in grad school, out of the 7 years that I was here, there were 5 EF4 or EF5 tornadoes that came within 2.5 miles of where I was living. 5 within 2.5 miles. I mean, one of those was the Moore tornado, but of 2013. But then there were a bunch of others, 2 of which went through East Norman. So I think there's really something important to be said here for what Kevin has found, that there's a real great advantage to what Moore is doing, especially for their long run. As much as Deidre, you felt in the immediate aftermath, how could we possibly recover from this? Actually, what you're doing is building better and stronger and wiser in a way that we south of you should also be considering.
And David, you had a point to make to Kim's comment about what that effect would be over time.
So yeah, so this is the place that and I could feel, Deidre, I could feel your frustration, because I feel it the same way. As an engineer, we want to solve problems, we want to get a solution in place. Let's think of this scenario. What if we use that Lubbock tornado 1970, the same time that Ted Fujita was developing his Fujita scale, remember, the same place. What if we took that opportunity back then and say took 5 years or 10 years to develop a building code? Okay, that would have affected not just the top 5% of our newest houses today, probably over 50% of our existing housing inventory would have been resilient or fortified, and I would have put Tanya completely out of business. Because there would be no reason for IBHS. If you engineered everyone there, the value of doing it better is that it repays again and again and again. Okay, so yes, we would like to say Moore is unlucky to have 99, 2003, 2013, and so on. But if you had better houses in 99, you would have less damage in 2003 and less damage in 2013. Okay, I think for me, it's not just thinking of the dollar value and the money. It is the disruption to people's lives. Okay, too many of us, you don't recognize how fully destructive this is until you have lived through it. And the tornado itself, or the hurricane itself, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's just when the troubles begin. The troubles continue over, and that, just think of the effort that one will have to do to get your insurance, and then to get 2 or 3 contractors to deal with the competition right after, when everybody wants to repair. So the prices go up, and labor is harder to find, and so on and so forth. And where do you live at the same time? How does your family work? It places stresses throughout the society and throughout your individual lives as a family. Okay, and so that's what we're about. The civil engineer in me says we here are here to support the commonwealth. A house is part of our commonwealth, even though you, individual owner, pays for it, right? But we are in this together. It is part of the commonwealth, and what Moore is going to do, you will see over time, is they will separate themselves by having less damage and much more manageable damage, if I could think of. You know, the thing that with the fortified homes is, I don't think Tanya will tell you not a shingle will blow off or not a window will blow off, but walls won't fall apart. Roofs won't be lost forever. You know, I continue to go back to Tuscaloosa where we lost a roof. I mean, I went up to the house, everything else was in the house was good, the walls were there, but the roof was literally gone. I mean, you know, this is what happens when we don't tie one component to the next.
So talk, David and Jim, I want to get back to you because you had a comment too, but David, talk about the things that drive you crazy when you go and see the damage afterwards, the mistakes that are made.
Yeah, I think that the major thing is the weak roof to wall connections. Mm-hmm. That really drives me crazy because I recall visiting NWS at Norman one time after 2003, and on a cab ride into Norman from Oklahoma, we passed some nice new houses that had hip roofs, and the taxi driver told me hip roofs are known to perform better in tornadoes, and that's why these were repaired that way. But in 2013, when I went back looking at the damage, so many of those hip roofs had very long roof rafters with toenail connections that had not a chance of surviving, no chance at all. And the thing is that the cost to do a proper connection that actually ties a roof to the wall, you know, it's probably, you know, a box of connectors that you can, you know, 20 pounds of connectors, a couple nails, $100. It's that low, it's that inexpensive and easy to do when you're building the house of first case.
So Tanya, you're talking about garage doors. Talk about that for a second, because, you know, I remember from the show with your husband and with Julie, you know, the main goal was to keep people in their home. And I think that's what David's referring to. If the roof stays on, they're not moving in an apartment like, you know, one of my associates, or, you know, Troy went through a winter storm, but he's in a hotel. So hotel rooms, apartments dry up. You better have it as part of your contingency plan to know where you're going to go in the hours right after a disaster like this, because all of those things suddenly become scares.
Yeah. And I don't think most people even fathom that could happen to them, even though, you know, if you play the degrees of separation, everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's been affected. But it's hard to imagine yourself in that scenario. And so picking up kind of on one of my own pet peeves from a construction standpoint is garage doors. In this country, we almost exclusively use unrated garage doors, except in the coastal areas. And the problem with that is anywhere that has any kind of building code requires a component and cladding load. And that means all of these places that are using unrated garage doors are technically illegal. It is not legal to use an unrated garage door if you require a component and cladding load in the building code. And if you think about all those people that have, any of you who have gone out and seen much tornado damage or even hurricane damage, there's a pretty marked association connecting garage door failures and the roof directly above the garage. There's a big connection there, a statistical connection. If you lose the garage door, you are pretty likely to lose the roof. If it was just the garage door, you know, all right, it's $1,500. You replace the garage door, it stinks, but it's not the end of the world. But you lose that roof, and you know, it's a whole different ball game. You lose the roof, and you've got major structural damage. Some houses can't survive that at all and have to be torn down and rebuilt from scratch. Using a wind-rated garage door is required by code because you have a component cladding load, and the cost differential is minimal, and it can make a huge difference in terms of keeping a roof on a house. I think it's another one of those things. People don't realize that they're being given inferior doors on their homes. There's a new piece of the code, the international code this year, that requires labeling of garage doors, so you at least would know that there's a rating associated with it. But there are millions of garage doors out there right now that are unrated. So if anybody's looking for some home improvement tips, your garage door should be pretty high on the list. You can retrofit it for existing houses.
And I'm going to grab that pick that Dr. Pravat just put in the chat there as my pick of the week. And it's from your website, Tanya, from the ibhs.org website, talking about, the garage doors being a part of that. Jim Ledoux, you jump in here. You had a couple of points you want to make.
I could actually walk my computer into our garage to show you one. It was pretty reasonable in cost. They offer them here in town. It's got extra bracing. Most garage doors, if you have a 2-car garage, it's got like one brace horizontally across. We have 4 or 5 going across, and then extra bolts into the side of the garage to hold the runner down. So we got that. The advantage is, it's like it's also heavier. So if you lose, if you accidentally lost the track or something like that, it's gonna be harder for somebody you don't want to lift it up. So yeah, that could be a selling point. I think the thing though, the key thing is that what we're talking about are low cost, high impact improvements throughout. And a retrofit, a renovation, there are tons of excuses out here. And Kim, I know we were talking about this, is that we've just had this hailstorm. A lot of garage doors were damaged. And here's the chance. You can get insurance at a little bit extra, a couple $100, I don't know, but it's certainly very small, and you could potentially save your house at the end of it. And it just makes so much common sense. And the same thing can be true for any other excuse that you have to do something a little bit better than what you did before. Let's say you're doing a bathroom remodel and you got to tear down some drywall. Well, here's your chance. You could actually help bolt down the sill plate to the foundation anywhere where the drywall is taken out. Now you have access to that sill plate, and you can just do a little bit incremental just in that spot. Same thing with our rooftops. If a roof's got to be replaced, well, why not just go ahead down and waterproof your deck to prevent any further loss than necessary? Add some more roofing nails, get those class 4 shingles. So there's lots of excuses here where renovation doesn't have to be intimidating, and you can add a little bit extra to get up on that extra rung of resilience.
Yeah. So James, were you running around with your contractor when you built your house, making sure that they did all these connectors and clamps? And
yeah, I don't know, but I'm gonna buy this guy some Chick-fil-A. That's all I know. That roof should have gone flying.
Yeah, because James, your home was affected here recently. Fortunately, you weren't forced to move out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there were trees down on the roof, but the roof stayed intact, which is amazing because so many homes in the path of that EF3, the roofs, went away. Second floor walls went away, and the second floor was just trashed. I mean, it was just so horrific. So for that roof to stay on that house, I am going to find out more about the engineering practices that they use to find out exactly what's up there. I would love to know.
Because that's a real selling point for that builder. Your home is a testimony of that. Deidre, go back. You're the only community in America outside of a hurricane zone that's done this. That's pretty amazing to me. Talk about how that idea came about and what obstacles and pushback that you got in the community when you started embarking on it.
Well, I am now just realizing how really extraordinary it is. And I tell you that, so here we are 8 years, and I just apologize wholeheartedly that we probably didn't know how really spectacular we are and what we came through and what we did. We did it, obviously it was before a year. So the storm was, in May of 2013, and we approved the codes, and it was a unanimous vote by the city council. And I don't know if you've been to any of our city council meetings, but they're notoriously very small and short. And so we just kind of get down to business and get her done type attitude. And even that one, we had a lot of good discussion. And I definitely remember the garage door being compromised discussion, and it all made sense. And everything you all just said literally makes complete and total sense to me. And I don't understand any of the engineering behind it or any of the science behind it. I just know what you've said made sense. And I've seen it house after house after house as I've walked through these damaged areas. And I know exactly what you're talking about. So that makes complete sense. However, it just dawned on me. And so I looked at the date of the storm and I thought, my house was built before that. I probably need to get my garage door changed out. And I just now had that revelation. So sorry that I'm a little bit of a slow learner, but it wasn't a struggle at all. I think, and Kim spoke to this even last week about just, we all lived here. And so we were grappling with just the heaviness of the ordeal. And it was hard to talk policy. It was hard to hear some of these very real, true statements that you all are making, because we were just brokenhearted. And so we were trying to be those city leaders that we needed to be and make those decisions. But honestly, we were just sad. And so it was hard to move. And I know many of you all were probably frustrated with this, maybe not acting as quickly, or maybe having to hear it again, or having people to come back and tell us one more time. But all of that, I do think we got our minds right. We got our hearts right. And there was no pushback whatsoever. Again, it was a unanimous vote. And I know the Home Builders Association came and spoke. They were in favor of it. We did have some private meetings with them prior to, just to hear their concerns. And I sat in on those, and their concerns were very small, and none of which were not overcomable. We all just talked through what that would look like. And I think Dr. Simmons, in your paper, you talked about kind of what the first costs were going to be, the dollar per square foot. I think it ended up being more like $2, maybe even more per square foot, all very manageable. And again, no negative implications to our growth whatsoever. I just remember people from Joplin asking, how is it possible that you've added more people every single year when in fact you've lost 800,000, 1,000 homes in a year? How can you end the year with population growth? And we absolutely did it. We built back those tornado destroyed homes. Plus we added people wanting to move here, just wanting to be a part of this community. So the pushback was nil. And I don't think I live in kind of a bubble here. I feel like I would know if we did have any sort of negative pushback. I do know now, though, that we've become complacent again. And so just hearing this makes me excited to think about what we could do to run little clips of video, maybe, thinking about remodeling, think about this, reminding people that we do have the only codes in our area here within the United States that are reinforced to provide this level of protection, at least to a certain level. Again, we never want anybody to assume that we're telling them that they can be safe in their homes and that they would survive, a storm the level of what we've had in the past. But the damage is horrific and very troubling, and does take a long time to get through.
So what percentage of your homeowners do you think have built back under the new code? So what percentage of your housing stock, and what percentage of the other homes are each year renovating to that?
Well, so and Dr. Simmons would probably know more. In fact, I read his paper and I was just so pleased to see all of your data. And we switched over our housing, the residential permitting database that we use. We switched over our system, and I don't know, sometimes I get super nervous. Are we double counting? Are we not counting enough? So we've lost on average around 950 structures, residential structures in each storm. So 99, 2003, and 2013. 2013, there was 1,091 structures that were eventually considered a total loss. Of those, we have less than 30 lots that have not been built on. So fewer than 30 lots back. So what's that? 970-ish, 950 of those built back. And those would have obviously been Some got built back before the codes changed. If you can believe it, they were very eager. And it's always amazing to me how people are waiting at City Hall the day after a storm, ready to start rebuilding back, even before their demolition permit's ready. You know, they're ready to start the rebuilding process. And sometimes we have to hold them back a little bit for us to kind of take a minute and figure out, how are we going to do this? You know, are we going to obviously waive the cost of a permit fee, which we do that. That's about the only incentive that we offer. But yet still people are very eager to get started. So I would guess that of the 900 homes built back, I don't know if I want to guess. Dr. Simmons, if you know, let me know if you know of that.
I'm afraid I don't, but my guess is after 8 years, if you want to think about the percentage of your housing stock that is under the new code,
right?
One thing to look at would be how many homes were in place prior to 2014.
Right.
How many have been built since then? Now, you
right.
have such a high rate of growth since then.
Right.
My guess is that you may be approaching half your building stock is under the new code.
Yes, and that's our biggest thing. We always do that, you know, back out the tornado rebuilds and see what our new growth is, and it always is this moving target. And by the time I try to figure it out, I can't do it any longer. But I mean it, and I'd have to look back at our new homes permitted since 2014, and I believe in your study too, you talked about, I don't know, I would just have to do the math on it. And that would hurt my head and my heart. I would be hurt to try to do it. But
so what did you model your code after, Deidre? What, some of the hurricane zone codes? Or
you know, I have no idea. You all would know better than I would.
Maybe David can jump in and
we had a great team that came in, and they all worked together as a team from all over, and really took the time and effort to make it specific. I know there's 12 components to it, but I'll yield to you all.
Yeah. So there was a structural engineering professor, Professor Ramsayer at Oklahoma, who, this is what you need. You just need an advocate. He was like you, Deidre. He just kind of said, nope, we're doing this. Mm-hmm. And he looked at the Florida hurricane code. We looked at the wind zones that were sort of equivalent to an EF2. As you said, we're not looking to see a pristine neighborhood if you have the top of the line EF4, EF5, but at 140 miles per hour windstorms or something like that, we can look at that. Professor Ramsey as well, he was also on our field investigation team after Moore. We utilized a lot of the debris impacts and just a lot of the load pass stuff that we had from IBHS that we knew. And again, this was stuff that is sitting on a shelf in somebody's, egghead like me. We've written these papers and it's just sitting there. All you had to do was to operationalize it. And that's what he did. He had some of his students and working with him in his lab. And I think, so on the engineering side, Professor Ramsayer was a big player, but on the advocacy side, or the municipal side, the mayor he did not let it go. I saw him speak at Flash, and you're not often are going to see a mayor cry. Not often. It was the first time and only time I have seen, because he could not believe he's going through this again in front of a huge auditorium of 500 people. And he just decided that this has to end today. Yeah, and it was by dint of there, just keep on, no, not taking no for an answer this time. And this is what communities are going to have to do, right? There's a lot of good reasons for just hitting the minimum, right? And we can all, label those off or run those off if we want. But there's some tremendously better reasons for actually designing your buildings so that they last long, right? It's not just the one house or the one family who's going to be there for 10 years or 7 years or 3.5 years, whatever is the minimum that we live in houses now. More wants to be here in 100 years. These houses will be here in 100 years. Seriously, we tend not to remember that, right? But in every tornado, I'm looking at houses damaged that were built in the 1920s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 2006. Every tornado, you're going to have about a 70-year range of ages. So that's what we're building for. We're not just building for the next 20 years or even for our lifetimes. We're building in value, and the only way to do that is to engineer it properly from the get-go.
Dr. Pravat, I'm so moved by the point that you're making. And, as a relatively new homeowner who's now gone through one of the crisis situations that, Jim, you were talking about, this could be a time where we could make these choices to add fortification. It is a tough time to learn about all of this and to know even what to ask for. So I'm wondering, Jim, if you have any recommendations that you can share. It sounds like you do for people who are in this kind of situation. What can we think about? Can you help to make this an approachable thing that people can really digest and dig into, as David has said?
Yeah, so it can be done in pieces at a time. Needless to say, if you're building from scratch, or if you are looking for a house that's in a new, that's being built right now, there are some things to look at. And honestly, I could show you pictures of this. And in fact, this is what I was doing when I was going around. I usually ride my bike around town. And so I've been on a mission to look at the new neighborhoods. And we're building here in Norman. The same construction companies that are building in Norman are building in Moore, and it's just it's a cost savings to them not to have to worry about building at different levels from one town to another. So I'm seeing the same things here in Norman as what's going on up there. So the key thing is I would start with the foundation. If you're going to a new house, this is what I would look for. I would look for the foundation, the studs are going up, and you'll see the sill plate running along the bottom, of the studs, connecting the studs to the foundation. And I would expect to see anchor bolts coming up from either the footing of the concrete foundation or the stem wall, whichever happens to be, roughly every 4 feet. There should be a couple studs around each corner of the house, within a foot of the corners. And then there should be good anchorage, nice, bolts properly put on with washers on there. And as I go up from that, the most common thing that's being done here and more is they're installing a sheathing around the studs, around the exterior walls, that overlaps the bottom sill plate, okay, and nailed straight in, right? So you don't stop at the top of the sill plate, you go all the way down. And there should be nails literally, in every sill plate coming in from the outside. And once you go up to the top, there's going to be a top plate, or there might be another floor diaphragm, a second floor, but the sheathing should cross over that, okay, and nailed on top. And then you'll have the let's say the rafters up on top, and they should be clipped with metal clips that come down and connect the top plates, the same top plates that are connected by the sheath, the exterior sheath. And by the way, I am definitely not a professional engineer. I am talking from listening to engineers, and so they're the ones that know all this. from the heart and know the science behind it. And of course, these are things that I wish I remembered doing back before. But I'd also have, so you have the whole thing plated, and then it comes up to the roof decking. Okay, now the roof decking is going on top of the rafters. Okay, the roof decking should be at least, preferably, I'd like to have 1/2-inch plywood up there. But if, OSB board is the most commonly used roof decking nowadays, and that's fine. But it should be nailed like every, and not just regular. Optimally, it should be ring-shaped nails. Okay, they're the ones with little rings going around, and you hammer them in. And they have a lot more pull strength than regular nails, but a lot of times they might use 8D or others to connect the two. So, oh yeah, there it is.
Is it okay if I share this, Jim, as you kind of go back? I'm probably making you do it over again, but you and David and Kevin, Deidre, anybody jump in. This is some of your presentation from AMS that Tim Marshall put together, because he was on the panel, and he was just on our show a few weeks ago. But you've got some examples here, like I think this is what you're looking for, Kim, right here. This blew me away when I saw it today.
This is what Moore is doing on the right. This is what they're doing on the right. Is the clip, and if you notice that the clip, a lot of times the top plates will be stacked on top of each other. There'll be 2 of them, and the plate will cross those 2 and then connect the rafter up on top. So one thing you do, if you go around, you look at new construction, you look for this kind of thing and make sure that those are properly connected. And then the deck, and Tanya knows a lot more about this. It's just simply waterproofing the deck, and you can put an underlayment, under the shingles, top of the deck, that basically seals off the deck from the interior. That saves a lot of money when you're talking about the combination of high winds and rain in case you lose your shingles. Okay, but we're not going to lose
that process cost right there, Tanya, to waterproof the underside of the deck like that.
This method is relatively expensive just because the foam is relatively expensive. The cheaper method is actually to do it from the top side. So if you're replacing your shingles, to do it at that point, either taping the joints between the plywood sheets or using a double underlayment. That runs in the $500, $600, $700 range. This foam way would be a fair bit more expensive, but there are definitely affordable ways to do it if you're already re-roofing.
And for our listeners who don't have the benefit of seeing, there's an application being applied to the underside of the roof deck, to the joists or whatever that is. I'm not an engineer and didn't stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. So they're applying a layer of foam there. Dr. Pravat, what would you add to that?
Yeah, so this method here is more than just waterproofing. This is a closed cell spray applied polyurethane. And it's actually an adhesive that binds the plywood or the OSB to those rafters. And we did some tests on that, I guess in the 2007-8 area. And in order to remove the deck, once a spray foam, closed cell spray foam, you will literally split the rafters in half. It's that strong. It changes the structural behavior of the roof completely. I recall doing that, and so that's a 3-part for the price of 1. It waterproofs. It gives you some insulation in your attic, as well as that structural adhesive property.
When those hot temperatures come rolling through, starting very shortly in Oklahoma, you're going to appreciate you have the insulation capacity too. And Jim, you were talking about sheathing. Here we see a visible example of composite or foam board versus solid. Explain the difference, one of you guys.
Yeah, so that foam board is not structural. It has no integrity to it. It's foam. That's it. So it won't resist. It won't resist a lateral force on the house. So if you have really strong winds, pushing on the house on one side, just having studs up and down is not going to resist that house from deforming from that wind. But if you have the sheathing, like on this side here, then it will. And a lot of houses don't have that. They might have just a little bit on the corner or even none at all. And they just have this foam board here. So
the example I always use when talking to people about foam boards versus solid sheathing is, I mean, you could imagine, a 10 or 12-year-old kid who likes to karate chop things, and that kid could probably karate chop through a foam board. It's foam, but that kid's not going to karate chop through solid sheathing.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible there. Here's that wall to foundation attachment you were talking about, Jim. So everybody jump in on that. You've got a toenail version on the left, toenail to the bottom plate,
right.
But in the good example, we're strapped to that bottom plate with a metal. What would you say that is? What is that called? A clamp or a connector?
Connector. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of these things, we try to help people understand how to build a house. Imagine you take the whole house and turn it upside down and let the roof hang off of the foundation. Everything must stay up there, right? And that's how the wind happens. The wind is going to suck everything as if it was by a reverse gravity to pull things apart. So anywhere that you have one component resting on top of another, it has to have a physical or a mechanical tie that binds those two together.
All right, here's the next example. The roof shingle type and attachment. Kim, this might be of interest to you at this point.
Yeah.
So Jim,
So
Jim or David, take it away.
Yeah, sorry. 3-tabs shingles on the left are definitely not the ones. You want, at least something that's called architectural shingles. And you see that it's going to have, 6 nails per shingle, going into the deck. There are other kinds, and I know, Kim, you mentioned class 4 shingles. They're the ones we use out here in hail alley, so to speak, because they're resistant to large hail. So either way, the key thing is to make sure they're really connected to the deck. And I know a lot of houses also have Spanish tile. The best way to connect those is either with a really nice proper adhesive or mechanical fasteners. Either of those two things would really help. Shingles, I mean, Spanish tiles look, they look solid, right? They're made out of ceramic, but I tell you, when the wind gets under them, they will blow just as easily as shingles. So they need that kind of connection.
And Tanya, y'all done some work in that regard, right?
We've done a lot of different wind kind of testing on roofs, including tile roofs, and yes, proper attachment is a big deal. Same thing on shingles. However, the sealant is actually the most important part for wind resistance of shingles. Having the extra nails is beneficial if the sealant pops, but really, if you have a good seal, that should be helpful. But I would say on the hail side of things, not all class 4s are created equal. We created a new test method to rate impact resistance of shingles in 2019 and publicly listed each brand and what its score was on our test. We're going to be refreshing that list sometime in May or June, just because products change in the industry. But not all class 4 products are rated the same. We have excellent performers down to marginal performers. We used to have some products that performed poorly, and those have actually been removed from the marketplace, which is great. So we're anxious to see how things are going, but you definitely can find different shades of gray of class 4. So little self-promotion there. Check out our shingle ratings because you'll want to know what the best options are for you.
IBHS.org, the new consumer reports of shingles, for sure. All right, David and Jim, anybody jump in building better siding types now? We got vinyl on the left, hardboard on the right, and I heard an oh my gosh there. So
I have to say something.
Touched the nerve.
After the hail this week, I went around and looked at all the vinyl siding, and all of it has hundreds of holes in each house. It's just a bad idea to have vinyl siding, and of course it's more susceptible to wind. So I think, Dave, that's hardboard. I think that includes concrete fiberboard, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. There's a trade name there, something, but it's a cement board. And I think Tanya, this is also something that is going to perform far better in the hail situation as well as the wind situation.
Yeah, and fire too. Fire performance is better too if you're concerned about wildfires.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing we haven't talked about tonight. You guys are also working on that resiliency and mitigation, aren't you, Tanya?
Yes, we're multi-hazard. So wind, hail, fire is really our bread and butter. And it's always nice when you can find products that work for all three. And yeah, the hardboard, fiber cement kind of boards, those are good options regardless of which peril you're trying to resist.
And that is not uncommon to deal with in Oklahoma either. Windows and doors, obviously another place. David, talk about standard builder's grade versus a higher grade of glass.
Yes. So the impact resistant glazing, it is it's a major advantage, and I think in Florida you have seen that just soup to nuts in any one of the within half a mile of the coastlines. Some of the things that you don't think about is how we all run over to Lowe's or Home Depot to buy plywood to put up over our windows before a hurricane. Imagine how dark that's going to make you feel when they're up there. Okay. With impact resistant glazing, we can have even large openings like sliding glass doors or something like that. That at least lets light in while you're being, you don't go up and stand next to it, but you'd be protected inside and not feel that claustrophobic way that you do. There are some of people who have done that almost as a point of self-insuring their homes. When insurance went up at some time in south of Florida, I know one forecaster actually who put all impact resistant glazing on his house because he thought, well, I prefer to spend the money there than to do the insurance, because you had something that you could rely upon.
And so we've been talking about site-built homes here predominantly, but Tim also had an excellent set of slides on manufactured homes, because this is another concern of ours is, how do we deal with that vulnerable part of the population? And we've had a couple of great shows this year talking about, what happens, with an unanchored or a poorly anchored manufactured home, with overturning and sliding. And so, Tim has some examples here, of better wind resistance through dual anchoring. Talk about that for a moment, whoever wants to take it.
This would fall in my sort of, this would get my hackles up every time, because again, there was another Dick Marshall in 1978. He identified the problem and he identified solutions, and we chose not to do anything about it. I think that ultimately we have to understand that even the dual anchors that we see here, there are fraught with places where weaknesses can occur over time, right? That they as the soil moves, it sinks or it comes up or something like that. You're always going to have some change in the stiffness requirements there. And once you have that, you're going to find yourself losing a lot of the strength on these connectors. I think it is high time that we consider addressing mobile homes completely in a much more rational way. It's insufficient for us as a society to say, just because this is in an inexpensive house, you should live here. I don't believe that.
So it's always amazing to me, Kim, that when we have a show like this, I don't know how in the world we're going to even fill 75 minutes. And then I realized that we could fill 150 minutes. I want to get to the real point of tonight for a minute. David, you feel very strongly that the Weather Enterprise has a megaphone that maybe architects and engineers may not possess. Talk about how important it is that we take that megaphone and do something with it. And what is it that we should do?
Well, you need to train me how to speak. I need to be able to speak to people just directly as we are doing here on a normal conversational business without telling them about the abracadabras. They don't need it. We have solved the problem. You need to be convinced that the problem is something that you and your community and your city needs. That's it. It's a very basic message these days of application of things that are existing. Now, Bill, you said something way back at the start of the 75 minutes, is that people are more convinced by someone, their neighbors or their friends, than by me. They absolutely, I think, if you speak to Kevin, you'd find that statistically, I'm a stranger, I'm an engineer, but if your neighbor, if your friend is doing something, you're more likely to adopt it. And so this peer-to-peer conversation is what we are trying to get started. And, as one of the most trustworthy professions in this country, I'm speaking to all of you weather forecasters here, you're a friend. They see you as a friend. They interact with you on a day-to-day basis, right? Oh yeah, they might try, oh no, he was wrong, she was wrong today, and so on and so forth. But when it comes down to the real stuff, they are going to listen. Many people are going to listen, and then they're going to talk about it. And it is the conversations that we want to get established. That one, it is possible. The solutions are known. They are reasonable, and they will last you not just 10 years or 15 years. It's a 100-year deal. It's a 150-year deal. So that is if you get the conversations that are, more is going to be like a stone you drop in the middle of a still pond. There's ripple effects already of better building happening. It's gone to Norman. It's going to go elsewhere beyond whatever the code says. It's just because the neighbors of Norman who lived in Moore, they did something, and we chose to do it. And that's how it's going to spread.
Outstanding. Now, I want to get last comments before James goes to the hard question of the night. He's always the one who asks the really hard questions. I give the softballs. So I'll start with you, Jim Ledoux. What have we left out tonight the screaming message that we need to communicate?
Okay, so I think what we left out is sometimes there's this attitude that, oh, if it's a tornado, we can't do anything about it. And that's just not true. Literally, we can do something about 95% of any tornado track, even if it's a violent tornado. Most of the tornado track is not going to be violent. It's going to be in the EF0 to EF2 range. And that's what we can do something about. We can cut the damage down even up to EF3. All right. Now, of course, when we're talking about violent tornadoes, we also have, the shelter, the actually official shelter that we would want to have in our house. But for the rest of it, we can really cut down the damages and save everybody a lot of grief if you realize that you can do something about mitigating damage from tornadoes. It is possible.
Outstanding. Deidre, it's been an honor to have you here tonight, and I'm keeping you longer than I wanted to. But last screaming message you want to make sure gets out tonight?
Well, again, just the realization of what we did accomplish, I think we've glossed over it to some.
1 in 89,000 jurisdictions, according to
Yeah,
Dr. Pratt.
I
That's
see. Those are
amazing.
numbers I need. And by the way, I think I came up with 2,100 new homes would have been built under these enhanced codes. But I mean, we should be a part of this. We want to be a part of this. And I would say to leverage us in any way that we could be helpful. I mean, we've come through it. We've got the data to prove it. It's not my data, it's Dr. Simmons' data, but I love it because it says there was no negative impact. But again, I don't want any community to think that it's easy. And we were a healthy, vibrant community before each and every one of our storms. And we literally became healthier and stronger and more vibrant because of those. And so I never want to paint the picture that, oh, all you got to do is get behind this and get a couple of council members that are all for this and make sure your building community is on board and that it's just an easy effort. I promise that I don't think it would be in other communities. I think the stars aligned here. I think timing was right. I think we had a lot of assistance, and I thank you all for pushing us forward, even probably when we were, again, brokenhearted and not wanting to move through the mechanics of what that took. But thank you all for taking us there. And now I think it's our responsibility to help and to be a beacon and to maybe help wade through some of the issues. And maybe it is council members misunderstanding possibly, and maybe they just need to see that a city can come through that on the other side and be successful. And if that's us, then I want to be that. So we'll use us, and we need to do a better job of telling our story so that our own residents understand what we've accomplished and what they can accomplish through our enhanced efforts in the codes.
Yeah, a lot to be proud of. Dr. Simmons, what would you like to add?
Well, the one thing that you started off with an anecdote about how divided we are as a country, and I hear people talking. This is a liberal thing, this is a conservative thing, and liberals like to have government in your business, and conservatives don't. Please show me a state more conservative than Oklahoma. And this was done in a political environment that by any definition would fall under the conservative banner, and they did it. So I don't think this is an issue that falls along these political divisions that we draw. This is just plain old common sense, like David keeps telling us, and it just defies explanation that we have to make it something that it's not. So I think that I would add that.
Great addition. Tanya, finally, before I go to James, anything you want to throw in here?
I think I would kind of hit on the point that we know what to do, but we can also do it pretty affordably. These are not big ticket, these are not options for millionaires. These are options for everyday people to either take their existing home and make it stronger, or if they're building something from scratch to make it stronger. We know how to do it. We know how to do it affordably. It's, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. It's for everyday people to make that choice for stronger homes.
All right. Well, guys, thank you all so much. Fascinating discussion here. Bill, I would ask some cranky questions, but we're out of time. So we've got to roll right into the recorded segments here. But again, thanks to everybody for being on the show. Great discussion. And before I play, Tony Rice got to give a shout out to his son, Matt. I don't know if y'all know Matt Rice.
Yeah.
Matt is, he turns 20 years old. So happy birthday, Matt.
We allowed to sing happy birthday?
Big happy
or
birthday,
is that copyrighted?
We'll probably get kicked off YouTube or something. We'll get flagged.
We'll do the restaurant version. It's a happy birthday.
Yeah.
But anyway, he turns 20 and he's a great guy. We spent some time together. Goodness, I want to say it was in St. Louis and hanging out and eating barbecue, but we better be nice to Matt because we'll all be working for him one day. So let's go to Tony and his astronomy report. We've got Jen in This Week in Tornado History. We'll come back with the weather roundup, email inbox, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
If you ask an astronomer about a light that you saw in the sky, they're probably going to ask you two questions. Was it moving and was it twinkling? If it wasn't moving and it wasn't twinkling, it's a planet or a moon. If it was twinkling, then it's probably a star. You see, the turbulence in our atmosphere disturbs that pinpoint of starlight coming from many light years away, much more than the disk of light coming from the much closer planets and moons. If it was moving, it's probably a satellite. Unless it was flashing, then that's a plane. That's the usual answer, but maybe not this week. If you see a dim flashing light moving through the sky before dawn, you might be seeing the core booster that lifted the first module of China's new space station last week. It's flashing because it's tumbling out of control. The 100-foot long, 16-foot wide, 20-ton core booster of the Long March 5B rocket is expected to uncontrollably re-enter the atmosphere in the next few days. It's the largest to do so since 1982, when the 40-ton Soviet Salyut 7 station re-entered over the Pacific. Even controlled entries, which are generally aimed towards the wide expanses of the South Pacific, are hard to predict when and where they will come down. This is because the upper atmosphere and the friction that is created as objects pass through it is very uneven. That density changes with the difficult to predict solar activity as well. All we know at this point is that this big bit of space junk, officially known as CZ5b, will come down somewhere between 45.5 degrees north and 45.5 degrees south latitude. But the risks are still minimal, because odds are the only witnesses to this will be the fish in the oceans that cover 70% of the Earth's surface anyway. Elsewhere in the sky, the Eta Aquaria meteor shower peaks on Tuesday into Wednesday morning. Best viewing will be before sunrise on Wednesday, as Earth turns into the stream of dust left behind by Halley's Comet during one of its many visits through our part of the solar system. This is a moderate shower, so expect somewhere between 10 and 20 meteors per hour from a dark location. Any light pollution in your area will drive that number down significantly. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, May 4th, 2007, the first tornado to be given an EF5 rating under the enhanced Fujita scale occurred at Greensburg, Kansas. The supercell that generated the EF5 also produced more than 20 other tornadoes across parts of southwestern Kansas during an 8-hour period. There were several satellite tornadoes spawned around the larger Greensburg twister, but there was also 3 other extremely large, significant tornadoes that plowed through this area during the late hours of May 4th. At 9:19 p.m., the first tornado warning mentioning the town of Greensburg was issued by the National Weather Service in Dodge City. A few updates occurred before a tornado emergency was issued at 9:41 p.m. The tornado destroyed nearly 95% of the city of Greensburg. 11 people were killed. Some were killed in their basements. The maximum width of the tornado was 1.7 miles. The Greensburg tornado was not the widest to occur that night. That designation was given to the Trousdale tornado with a maximum width of 2.2 miles. From an article about the Greensburg tornado by U.S. Tornadoes, quote, despite great warning, Greensburg is only about 1.5 miles wide at its widest. So the tornado impacted the whole town in some way. The scene was perhaps better described as a post-apocalyptic than post-tornado. Per the damage survey, 662 homes were analyzed and assigned an EF scale rating. 7 homes were found with EF5 damage. That is 1% of the homes surveyed. 16% of the homes had EF4 damage. The official path length was 25.8 miles, and the path was unique. It moved northeast out of Comanche County into Kiowa County. It then curved to the north and then to the northwest before making a complete loop northwest of Greensburg. Greensburg was declared a major disaster area on May 6, 2007 by President George W. Bush, and more than $100 million in federal assistance was provided. The town decided to build back better, stronger, and greener. We have all the details about this event and much more at tornadotalk.com.
All right. So, Aubrey, can you do a quick email segment? We have not done one in so long. I mean, I just think we need to dive into that email inbox, because you never know what happens to be in there.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right. I think we've got a few in here. I had it pulled up. 1 second. All right. So from our friend of the show, Jeremy Bauer.
Jeremy, thank you very much for your email. It was very, very nice. I will not read the whole thing, but Jeremy went through and did a breakdown of some of the milestone episodes until this point as we count down to 800. So episode 100 in December of 2007, it was the retrospective of the previous 99 episodes. Let's see, episode 200 in 2009, we had Dick Goddard on and Dr. Thomas Schmidlin. And then let's see, episode 331, May 29th, 2012. That's when the YouTube era begins. Sean Potter was one of our guests. And then we have Bruce Thomas interviewing the Brains in August of 2015. That's episode 500. And in 2017, we have Dr. Patrick Marsh and Kim Kloko. That was episode 600. So, Jeremy, we thank you for all of your information. We thank you for your support. And thanks for just being a great friend of the show. So we appreciate you listening and sending us some great information. The other friend of the show, Tarmo from Estonia, is driving the topic of the March 25th outbreak. He said, but part of a remote sensing coursework at the university, he was looking at satellite images of some of the damage in Alabama caused by that outbreak. And he was looking at some of the damaged scars. So some really interesting satellite photos that he had sent to us and that he had noticed in Alabama. So thank you for that. Kathleen Welsh sent us a little listener survey. She says she's been listening for over 10 years, doesn't remember how she found the show, but extremely happy she did. She also made another comment that, you know, when it kind of comes to the length of the show, that in-depth discussions take time as long as anyone participating can devote that time to the show. So it's a very good point there. And our other friend of the show, Mr. Johnny Parker. Johnny Parker, always very active on social media. And we want to thank Johnny Parker for all of his support over the years and for sending us some great stuff and for just being fantastic. Johnny wrote an article, kind of a write-up. This was in response to the April 27th, 2011 Smithville, Mississippi tornado. So he had a write-up and he had a lot of tweets corresponding to everything that he went through. If you're not familiar with Johnny Parker's story, he survived, him and his family survived the Smithville, Mississippi EF5 tornado. And part of his story is in the book, What Stands in a Storm by Kim Cross. So thank you, Johnny, for that write-up and for those great tweets. And this is from the Central Alabama Weather Authority. I am not sure, James, if you answered this, but the email says, hey, James, what do you think the maximum strength of the Centerville tornado was at its maximum intensity? I think it was an EF4. Radar image looked a lot like Bassfield and So-So.
You talking about the one in 1973 or the one this year?
I'm not sure.
The 1973 of Bill Murray, that was what, EF4? Greensboro, Brent, Wilsonville destroyed the old WSR 57 radar facility at Pondville near Centerville, and the same place got hit this year by a tornado taking a very, very similar track. So, but this year's tornado, in my opinion, was not as intense as the one in 1973. So they were both bad, but the one in 73 was worse.
All right, so that's our list of emails. So if you have an email for us, some great links, guest suggestions, something you'd like to share with us, email at weatherbrains.com. Love to hear from you.
All right, Bill and Bruce, you pick it up right after this.
Calling all weather enthusiasts. Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band at amsweatherband.org. As an AMS Weatherband member, you'll get to go behind the scenes with the scientists of the American Meteorological Society, whose members have been at the forefront of weather, water, and climate research for over 100 years. You'll learn about the very latest research from the scientists who are actually doing it. What's more, you'll become a part of a passionate online community of weather enthusiasts. Get access to exclusive videos, webinars, and other fun content, and support the science you love. Learn more and join the band today at amsweatherband.org.
I've got my certificate right behind me here on the old bookcase wall. We're thankful to the AMS for their sponsorship of the show, and we're also thankful to Midland Weather Radio. Midland Radio. Bruce Jones joins us tonight, as he always does at this time, because he always has something incredible to talk about. Bruce, Jen was talking about Greensburg. One thing this show makes, for me at least, is everything seems closer together. Seems like just yesterday that tornado was hitting Greensburg. Any weather radio stories come out of that night?
Oh yeah, the Weather Radio Network performed perfectly. the tornado warning and the resulting tornado emergency message were issued by National Weather Service out in Dodge City, and everybody got the warning, I think, in due time, and took shelter appropriately. But yeah, it was a big one. I was down there a few days afterwards, and it's always sobering to be in a situation like that. And they had an interesting situation because they wanted to rebuild the city, and the mayor kind of held everybody back, saying, well, let's not get started. Don't just jump in yet. Let's have a plan and have a master plan so we can do this right. And I know that there was a lot of pushback on that because people want to get their lives back together and get their home put back together. But I've been to Greensburg several times since then. And, looking back on it, they did it the right way. They had a master plan. And it's a beautiful city, and they've got the wind power, and they've got some solar power, and their new high school is like almost atom bomb proof, and their emergency operations center, same thing. And so you go back in there, and it just looks a lot like a brand new community, but you can still find some of those empty slabs still sitting there as a reminder of what happened that night.
Yeah, my weather radio was working perfectly yesterday, Bruce. Getting a workout here in Central Alabama for the next couple of days. You got a great offer for listeners of the show that we want you to share with them.
Yeah, the National Weather Service runs this network of 1,033 weather radio transmitters. So they cover about 98% of the U.S. population with a signal, but we need more people to take advantage of the signal. National Weather Service sends out this broadcast for free, but you have to get a receiver to pick it up. And what I would like to encourage everyone who enjoys this program to do is to be a voice and an advocate for the NOAA weather radio system, which is run by your National Weather Service. It's a tremendous bargain. It doesn't cost very much for you to get a radio. And thanks for being a WeatherBrains fan. We'll give you 25% off on a weather radio purchase. Go to midlandusa.com and use the promo code SPAN25. That's SPANN 25, SPAN25, and you get 25% off of a weather radio purchase. These make great Mother's Day presents, because the great thing about knowing that your mom has a weather radio is you know that you don't have to call her and tell her there's a tornado watch for her area, nor do you have to watch a radar scope all night to make sure that she doesn't go under a tornado warning. She'll get that watch or warning faster than you can call her and give it to her. So weather radios make a wonderful Mother's Day gift. It's a gift that not only gives your mom peace of mind, but gives you peace of mind, knowing that whatever happens in her neck of the woods, she's going to get the warnings direct from the National Weather Service, and they will come in automatically without you having to call. 25% off when you use the SPAN25 promo code at midlandusa.com.
Yeah, someone just mentioned, I think Jim mentioned that Mike Umscheid was the Grandmaster of the Greensburg Day Parade. And he was on our show just a couple of weeks after that tornado, and it was really one of the outstanding shows that we've ever done. Bruce, one of our listeners pointed out last week, we were talking about programming a weather radio like it's writing a Python program for a computer. It's not that hard. It made me rethink my wording there. I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm never going to say I'm going to program a weather radio. Talk about what should we be saying?
Well, yeah, maybe you just set up your weather radio, because
there you go.
You're right. It's not that difficult. And we've tried to make it as easy as we possibly can. You still have to do a couple of things with a weather radio, but you do want to set it so it'll only go off for your county. And maybe you want to turn off the audible alert for amber alerts or a flood watch or whatever. I mean, you can customize it. But the bottom line is it does not take that long, and it's not that difficult to do so. And you can always call our customer service line, or just call me and I'll walk you through it over the telephone.
Bruce will even come over and program it for you. Well,
I've done a lot of those.
Nate
too.
Johnson, it's going to be a hard thing for me to break this using this word programming. Bruce will come over and set up your weather radio for you next time he's in town. Thank you, Bruce. We appreciate it. Quick weather roundup. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. Nate Johnson, are you going to miss out on the severe weather tomorrow? You think you're in the marginal
We had a
risk,
couple
I
of
think.
storms. Yeah, a couple of storms come through here today. I'm actually watching what may be turning into a little QLCS type thing south of Dallas, like a signature, a what appear to be a TDS, a very small one, crossed I-35 south of Waxahachie, Texas, just south of Dallas. Should have been about an hour and a half ago. There's some traffic accident on I-35 or crash on 35 about that same spot, possibly related. So, and we got more severe weather coming across the southeast tomorrow.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Kim Cloco, did y'all make it through the storms today? Okay, they were sort of east of you, weren't they?
Yep, and I'm watching the same thing that that Nate is. We were just to the north and west of any of that, so we were always right on that boundary, but we didn't have to worry too much about the situation here, which is good. We can go for a little bit of a break and not having to worry about monster hail again. But it looks like our neighbors down near McAllister in southeast Oklahoma, and that general vicinity might not have been as fortunate. And of course, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metro and Kevin Simmons. I went and looked at Radar Scope to see what was happening in Sherman, Texas. He's having a pretty fun time right now. Had to drop off of the meeting really quickly. Said goodbye to everybody, and it was lovely to be on the show, but he is sheltering. It's May.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. And we think when we get to May in Alabama that we're out of tornado season, but unfortunately, that's going to be an issue tomorrow. There, Aubrey, I know you've got background noise. You may not want.
I'm so sorry. I thought I was muted. I was just sitting over here. La la la.
Need to tell your coworkers to cut it out. We're doing a podcast.
I know this is very important here. You can see Kyle in the background. He's wearing shorts, so he's waving.
Hi, Kyle.
It is warm in here tonight. A little weather roundup. Did you see the supercell? So just north of my area from Charlestown, West Virginia, just to Baltimore County near Baltimore, it looks like a supercell was lasted for about 3 hours, kind of producing rotation and dropping tornadoes. Haven't seen a whole lot of damage photos out of that area, but the winds were backing, kind of riding the warm front in that spot. So we can't even get any lightning here in the Shenandoah Valley, but several tornado warnings just to the north. And then we're going to be in the low 60s by the end of the week behind the front. So kind of refreshing.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Jennifer Nairmore, what is the historic town that is across the river from Charlestown, West Virginia?
Oh, my word. In Ohio?
The tornado expert. No, in Virginia.
Oh, in Virginia?
Is it Virginia or Maryland?
Maryland, sorry.
I don't know.
Get my state right. Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry.
Yeah.
It's right there across the river. Jen, you're going to turn cool the end of the week too, aren't you?
Highs in the 50s. So yeah, we get a few thunderstorms here, maybe a severe storm here or there, but then it gets cool again, and really doesn't warm up too much even for the weekend. So maybe we'll find 70 again in June. I don't know.
Yeah. Jim, anything you want to add to Norman weather?
Quiet for once.
You'll be some good bike riding days coming up here in the near future, I guess.
Trees are having a hard time in this around here over the past year, so it'd be nice to give them a span of time for them to grow back a little.
We have one little storm that has formed in Shelby County, and my wife Elle just said there's a tremendous light show going on outside, so we'll have to hurry up and finish the show here so I can go out and see it. Tanya, any weather from South Carolina?
We did have tornado warnings in our county actually earlier, early afternoon, and then moving into the Charlotte metro area. We're due for more thunderstorms again tomorrow. Hopefully we won't have any more warnings, but it's always interesting here. The county that I live in, there's a nuclear power plant that's very close, and they run a siren system. So sirens are all on or all off. So we were not in the warning ourselves, but because it affected a portion of the county today, the sirens all go off. So that's when my phone always starts blowing up with people saying, are we really in the warning? Are we not in the warning? Because the power plant sounds everything. So we'll see what comes tomorrow. Slight chance for us, but hopefully nothing too bad.
Respect the polygon. Tanya, we usually let the guests come up with the picks at the end of the week or picks at the end of the show. So I bet you've got one, though, right off the top of your head that you'd like to share with us.
Oh, let's see. I had one. Do I need to share my screen to bring it up?
Nah, just tell us.
Okay.
I don't think you can. James is probably, I didn't look to see, but he probably prevent. Ooh, now we're getting thunder. Yeah, you could share your screen, though, if you wanted to.
Okay. Well, we talked a lot about good building construction today and what we can do to really make a big difference in terms of building to a better standard and what kind of that looks like. So I think if I can get this pulled up right, let's see. Well, where did my page go? Hang on, bear with me.
Yeah, while you do that, we're getting really loud thunder here. We've gone all day and at our house without any lightning or thunder, and looks like that the Birmingham Weather Office extended the severe thunderstorm watch just across the Jefferson County Shelby County line. So they're in the watch. We're not, and it looks like it may have paid off because that's a loud storm out there. It might become severe. Tanya, you got it. Got your screen sharing queued up there?
No, I can't get my video to come up that I was going to show. But anyways, what I was going to show is two houses side by side. We've tested in our test chamber. One is fortified, one is not. The fortified one falls over under high winds. You can find it on our website. I just am not finding it super
I have
quickly.
a feeling there are going to be a lot of people on your website in the next few days. I'm going to be one of them because I'm going to use my pick of the week, your entry for garage doors that Dr. Bravatt put in our chat. So that's going to be my pick of the week. Jim Ledoux, we kept you really long here. I know you saved a pick, though, for us.
Oh, yeah. So if I was to pick something, I'm one that loves this map here. It shows all the surveys that are done by the Weather Service. It's called the Damage Assessment Tool. If you actually Google it, you can bring it up and show it. Yeah, I could chat it too as well, but
yeah, send it to me either way, and we'll get it in there. And
yeah,
and
so
make sure
this
that's your
one
pick of the week.
you can go back years. You can filter and look at impacts to houses or schools, power poles. You can filter all sorts of things. It's got a bit of a learning curve, but you don't have to start that curve just to look at things to start off with. But if you really want to dive into the record, it's got an amazing filter and search tool.
Outstanding. Thank you tonight for putting the show together for us. It was truly amazing, and we really had a good time doing it, Jim.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
Now Tanya's found her video.
Yeah, there it is. So
there you go.
This was
is that done in your wind tunnel? And
Yep, that was done in our wind tunnel. This was one of our grand opening events in 2010. So side by side, two homes built exactly the same, except one is fortified and one is not. And you can tell what happens to the not fortified one. It literally blows out the back door.
It literally disintegrates.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So gonna go find me a fortified house. I tell you what. Oh, that's just that's amazing right there. All right, so let's see, who have I got? Kim Colgo McLean. I know you got a good pick of the week for us.
Based on the conversation today, I thought of this really neat book that I'd read about 10 years ago. It was published by Howard Kunreuther and some of his colleagues at the Wharton Business School, and they do analyses that look at different mitigation strategies in other kinds of ways to see what the economic benefits might be. And they were looking at specifically at different kinds of state policies that have been implemented for hurricanes and what the outcomes were for that. So if you want a neat read that's sort of in the vein of all of this, I thought that was a really pretty cool book.
Outstanding. Thank you, Kim. Bruce Jones, you always have a great pick of the week for us.
Well, we've had some big hail falling recently. There's the Coffeyville, Kansas hailstone that fell September 3rd, 1970 in Coffeyville.
Is your hand cold, Bruce? I mean,
yeah, it's freezing. Yeah. I'm going to put this in an old fashioned here just shortly. It'll be a big one. It'll be a big one.
Bruce's house.
So, yeah, come on over.
That's right.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for your support of the show. We appreciate you. Jennifer Nairmore, I know you got a pick of the week.
I do. Well, I'm going to pick the old fashioned here in a minute. Last week, we had the powerful show on the anniversary, and Chris Darden from the National Weather Service in Huntsville was wonderful and just very open about his stories. And he actually wrote his story down before, during, and after April 27th. And I asked him to send it to me, and he did. And then I was so moved by it. I said, do you mind if we put this on the website? And he was totally for it. So I got it up today. So my pick of the week is his story as one of our funnel features of remembering the super outbreak. It is amazing because he really gives you a great perspective from the Weather Service of what they have to do before, during the event, and then after. And it is absolutely amazing. And it's beyond service, National Weather Service. It's beyond that, what they have to go through. And I'm so honored that he shared that with us, so we could put that on the website and hopefully reach a bigger audience so people can see what they do. And just he's a great representative. So please go check that out.
It truly is an amazing story, and it's going to appear on our blog also later this week. But you got to go read this. Because it was just scratching the surface. The whole show could have been about Chris last week, and this fills in everything else. So Jen, thank you for posting that, and thank him for letting you post that.
You bet.
Because that I didn't know if he'd want to share that. Because it is.
I didn't either.
Really
I told him. Yeah, I told him. I said, I know this is personal. So I understand if you don't want to share it. And he was so willing. And I just told him, I said, I think this is going to have a huge impact on so many people from not even just, from the weather enterprise, but folks who don't understand what the Weather Service does and this covers everything, what they have to go through. It's really powerful.
It really should be a book or at least an article in a major magazine, because it is pretty incredible. Nate Johnson, you got a pick of the week?
Big day in the climatology world, big day in UTC, because the new climate normals from the National Centers for Environmental Information have dropped. You can go to the website and check out lots and lots of locations, and there's not just the daily normals that you're used to, but in some cases there are hourly normals. And for most of the United States, not all of it, but for most of it, your normal high temperatures and low temperatures have gone up, because the 10 years, the new 10 years in the data covering the 2011 through 2020 period were warmer than the period that we just dropped, which is the 81 through 90 period. So we're going to see lots of depth and stuff to dig out of that. But the headline there is we're a warmer world and a warmer country than we were 10 years ago.
Yeah, no question. And that means I've got some almanac revising to do now that those have come out. Here's a video right now, right outside my house from my wife Elle's cell phone. Some pretty amazing lightning going on right there that I'm missing. But this show has certainly been worth it. And I guess that's it. Nate Johnson, I'd entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
All right. WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. We do it on Monday nights, and we have amazing times like we've had tonight every week. I want to thank all the contributors tonight, Jim Ledoux for putting the group together, Tanya for you sticking it out to the bitter end. It was great having Deidre and Kevin and David on the show. It was a really fun time. But until we do this again next Monday night, and I forget what we're going to be talking to Hersman. To Daryl Hersman. I'm so excited about that. So he's going to be here next Monday night. So it will be Weather Geekery at its finest. But until we do that, I am guest booking officer Bill Murray. And for the whole WeatherBrains gang, I want to tell you to keep an eye to the sky, because you'll always have something fun to look at, like this lightning outside right now. Y'all have a great week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Tanya.
Ah, and you're still here. All right. Fun show. I want to go back and listen to all that. Some really smart people on the show tonight talking about fortified homes and mitigating damage during tornadoes. Very interesting discussion. But we've got some active storms, so I got to run back in Studio A here. Thank you guys for watching WeatherBrains tonight. If you want to follow us over on the Instagram Song of the Night,